How you been, Dennis?
Just a young kid with a dream. Yourself?
Better for talking to you. Better for talking with you right now. The Red Circle Sports, again, is available every single Tuesday at PodcastOneSports.com and the Podcast One app. What's on your mind, sports-wise, Dennis? What's been leaping out at you to talk about on your pod?
Well, the greatest of all tournaments about to begin. Tonight, the Stanley Cup, and I think it's for the next, ironically, it's 2 months.
Gird your loins. Gird your loins, Dennis. It's going to take about
like
2 months.
Thunderdome.
Right.
2 enter, 1 leave, and I think Vern Troyer's coming in on the Master Blaster's shoulders. But every game is you know what I mean? I can't watch the NFL anymore.
You said that the last time we spoke. Really? Have you really sworn off the NFL?
I watched I don't think I watched the Super Bowl, but I watched some of the playoff games because I can't. I'd say I watched 10% of what I used to watch. I finally got it. They kept saying it was an unsafe game. Goodell said there were problems with the game. Goodell said that there was no social justice. It finally sunk in. I said, I'm participating in an activity I shouldn't be. I got it. It's ironic it comes from the guy who's getting $40 million a year out of it, but it finally sank in. He said, no, they don't want to play Thursdays, but it's such a typical thing where he said, I've got actuary tables that say there's no discernible difference. Then all the players say, we don't want to play Thursdays. We feel it's dangerous. And he said, well, I'm going to continue to play on Thursdays because I care so much. And I just thought, okay, I get it. They don't really care. They're going to make the helmets more Kubrickian, and the playing field's more adherent, and it's like cue balls now bouncing around out there. So I get it. I finally, it sunk in. I thought, Goodell's right. This is not something you should either have your kids play or watch, so I'm out.
So, but you did watch some, Steeler playoff games? Is that what you watched?
I watched, I like Brady a lot, but I don't know the Steelers as well as I used to, because I haven't lived there in so many years.
Right.
And I don't have the NFL package anymore. So that's been 2 years now I quit that. And I don't know. Periodically I'll listen to Albino because I've talked to him and he says he's got a good one. So we'll talk during the week and I'll watch him. I love listening to Al. I think he's the best at it.
Yes, he is.
But I listen to it more for situational things that just sound exciting in the same way that, like, I've gone to WrestleMania or I watch other things. But as far as sports go, it has made me go back to baseball. The atrophy of the NFL, and hockey's my fave.
So the hockey tonight. So again, I know it's been a while since you've lived in Pittsburgh, but the Penguins, is that your interest in the Stanley Cup? The fact that they won back-to-back, they dropped puck tonight against Philadelphia.
Yeah, I love the Penguins, and I follow the Kings because I live out here. But I will say this about Murray: I know he had a concussion for Pittsburgh. But I also sense that sometimes you watch these lean string being kids in goal, and like Dryden, when he came up that one year, all of a sudden they lock into some sort of God amongst men guys. But he is a kid. I still see Murray having like acne when they do interviews with him, and he lost his old man early in the year, and I guess it threw him for a complete loop. So obviously when you're in that blue paint, you have to be. And I'm sure between that and the concussion, it's just been a bit of a traumatic year. Now, there comes a point, I believe, in each of these NHL games, since nobody gives an angstrom, and they just press. It's like water bearing on a surface. We'll see if Murray is healed up, or is maybe it's want for a young man to do, that he's just not quite there this year, that he hasn't reinforced all the rebar. But if he's on, if Murray plays out of his mind again, certainly they have a shot at the third one. They've got Sidney and Malkin, arguably two of the 5 greatest players on the planet, right?
And then the Kings are dropping puck tonight, facing off with the number 1 seed, Las Vegas. I mean, that's an interesting one. What a story that's been this year.
Yeah, they've been great, and I think that their last 18 games, I thought I heard some statistic. I don't know if you ever listen to the NHL Network. God, that is some really beautiful puck being talked over there. But kind of, they've kind of in their last come back to earth a little. And the Kings are strong up the middle, man. It's like baseball, Rich. When you got Doughty, Quickie, and Kopitar up the middle, and Brown looks like he's been freed up. I don't know what the interaction was between Dustin Brown and Coach Sutter. But obviously, Brownie's a new man, new lease on life. The Kings gave up the least goals in any major sport when you go to win the championship. To be the best defensive team certainly augurs well. And I think it'll be a 7-game series, but that's one where I'd give the Kings a good shot.
Dennis Miller, host of Red Circle Sports, available on Podcast One. New episodes and new pods drop every single Tuesday right here on the Rich Eisen Show. And so what about baseball has attracted you, Dennis? What's going on there?
The fact that, and by the way, Rich, I want to say my sources tell me on the ground that they found out what goes on inside the King Faisal tent that is the concussion protocol now. I actually was wondering, why do I see guys go in there in like some Stargate SKG or something where they're cavorted into another dimension? I never see them come back in. And I found out what the NFL protocol is now for whether or not they ask the kid inside there what currently constitutes a catch in the league, and they all come up.
Now hold on a second. Again, I know you've turned away, you've shunned, or you've said that the sport has shunned you. However you want to put it, they did simplify it. They simplified it. They simplified it in the last couple of weeks. They fixed it.
I'm sure it'll be good. They make wise decisions. The game's not complicated at all anymore. I always think that what was Trump? He was doing away with 5. What was he trying to get rid of? You had to lose 2 regulations for one end. Right. Whenever I hear about the competition getting big, and by the way, I think Jeff Fisher was the big guy in the competition committee for the last, not anymore, obviously. Mm-hmm. But come on, Fish at one point, when they just come up short down at the at the goal line. He's in the game, but he was phoning it in on a rotary phone towards the end. And every year they would go into that competition committee and figure out, Ed Hockley didn't even lift weights. All that was just from signaling penalties, his upper body development. And my feeling is they should go in there one year and say, we've got so many damn rules, it's silly, we're going to prune back 10. I think the fans would like that. But right now, it used to be a game that people want to escape on weekends, and now it reminds them of the office. And I think that's a bad thing. I think, God, that's all the BS I have to face in the office every day, filling out forms in triplicate. Anyway, back to baseball. What fascinates me is Terry Collins was a good man, but it points out the nature of sports is that you can be a completely grand fellow and not be fitted for a job due to the Peter principle at any given moment. I look at Callaway. He comes in hungry. He knows how to run the pen. I look at Collins. He seemed like the nicest of men. I bumped into him once. And, I'm talking about the Mets because they're out of the box at 9-1, and they're my son's favorite team. And, you get rid of I don't know who was their trainer last year. I think it was Blanche Dubois. They were so delicate. You get some stretching exercise in there, and you get a young guy who feels a little more vibrant. And look, it turns around 9-1. So it reminded me that there can be men who are helming teams who are exemplary gentlemen and are never going to win. Andy Reid seems to me to be a fine enough fellow. I met him. I know he's had some personal grief. I think he's one of the best regular season coaches you've ever saw. But something about they get a hitch in their giddy up when they're in the kill zone, And my feeling is you've got to really swing wild, from the heels. Mm-hmm. That's one thing you got to give Peterson in the Super Bowl last year is that when I saw the replay of that, I don't even know what it was, triple reverse. Yeah. I thought, wow, my man realizes he better go for this.
Oh yeah, and that's why they won that game, because he had the stones to. Well, first of all, Foles was the one who said, "Let's try it." And then he looked at his quarterback right in the eyes and realized what the quarterback was suggesting. He said, "Yeah, let's do it." Instead of settling for threes, this is the way that you got to beat Belichick. What was your a couple more minutes left with Dennis Miller again? Red Circle Sports available on Podcast One, certainly every Tuesday. What was your relationship like with Belichick when you were doing Monday Night Football?
I could tell that Belichick never wanted to open his mouth because then he'd have to keep opening his mouth. Listen, you're sitting in a room with 15 guys who are there for the free hot dogs. They've got corduroy jackets on with those things on the elbow pads. They're pissed off that they've topped out at like $40K some of them, or they're doing stringer work. Imagine you're a stringer covering an NFL team. You're right at the gate of watching all the riches, and your boss tells you he's going to pay you by the column inch. In other words, he's working out a slide rule for to give you your salary. So you got a bunch of cranky guys in there. Belichick doesn't like them. I don't think they know football that well. There's a couple guys up there in Boston who do. I forget that one guy's name, Shaughnessy or something, but Dan something.
Yeah, Dan Shaughnessy. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think there's some smart guys up there, but by and large, you're fielding questions. And Belichick, you can see him thinking, I just don't want to open this Pandora's box where I act interested in this guy. So he goes flat-face, and I'm good for him. But when he was in a room with Albino and Fauci, and granted, not me at first, I could see him looking askew at me, but after I met with him, a couple times, I found him gregarious, funny, super smart. He's the best coach in the history of the NFL, right?
He is. He is. They might, Irvin says they should rename it the Belichick Trophy one day. I told him, please ask that of Belichick in a press conference. Please do that once. I would
down at the Super Bowl. I'd love to see Bill react to that.
Just fantastic. That would be a famous eye roll. I would be remiss before I let you go, Dennis. Mitzi Shore passed away here in Los Angeles.
When did that happen?
Say that again?
When did it happen?
That happened this morning.
Well, she led a long life. My God, I knew Mitzi. I remember this about Mitzi, and rest her soul. And
Comedy Store, right here in Los Angeles.
Yes, right. And I like her son, Paulie. He's always been kind to me. And Mitzi put me up a few times. But I do remember meeting with Mitzi after my first set there, and they said, Mitzi wants to meet you. And there's always some table in the back. It reminded me of Burt Reynolds in Boogie Nights. Remember when he goes out into the deep valley to catch some act, and he's way in that back table? There's always that table where the fixers are. And I went back, and Mitzi was sitting there, and she said, Dennis, I think you have a funny mind, but I don't think you're a performer, and if you continue to do so, you should wear more sweaters. And I remember writing that down, and it inadvertently helps you, because when you are suffering and up against it in comedy, and you think, well, the note I got from the expert was wear more sweaters, you become your own expert at that point. You know what I mean? You're able to look at that. I wrote it down on a Post-it. I said, well, I don't know much, but I think I'll act as my own tour guide here. If the note I'm getting from the top is to wear more sweaters. Wear
more sweaters. Hey, Dennis, thanks for the call and appreciate it. Enjoyed being on Red Circle Sports when you rebooted it for PodcastOneSports.com and the app Podcast One. Please come back and let's chat again soon.
Ricardo, anytime. You're a good man. Good to talk to you, brother.
Right back at you. That's Dennis Miller at Dennis DMZ.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.